It's making me want to rap.
Hey, y'all. Okay. Jeremy just revealed himself. Not in that way.
We're going to delete that, right?
That way. All right. Welcome, y'all. I missed last week for obvious reasons. I explained that. And yeah, you don't care. You shouldn't care, actually, because this episode is going to be a two-parter. I had to explain it to Jeremy that this is going to be a lot of information. So welcome to season 4, episode 8. We got Jeremy back. And we haven't seen Jeremy since the Idaho 4, which was a very popular episode, actually.
That was a very strange case, but I guess they're all strange cases.
Yeah, and I kind of want to revisit it, but it got so messy. I was like, until that dude goes back to court, if he goes back to court, like, I'm probably not going to touch it, because it's one of those things that just kind of is like ever evolving. And then there's a lot of conspiracy theory, there's a lot. And sometimes when you're trying to put all those pieces together, you're like, I'm just exhausted with this. Like, I don't know what's real anymore.
I get it.
So I was in it for a minute because they had released a lot of files on that case, and it made it even weirder. It was just like, oh, this is starting to feel like it's just a massive cover up. Like it does.
I remember I thought there were a lot of weird details that felt like a cover up or something weird going on.
Right. I mean, none of it really makes sense. And this episode today is similar in that it's not about, a flagrant murderer who's just like, doing anything insane. It's really just about what I deem as sociopathic people who have engaged in crime in order to maintain power, which
they are out here.
Yeah. And they're still out here. And so for this episode, we're going to talk about, I call this episode the United States of Blackmail.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, because that's really what it's about. And this is going to be part 1. For this episode, I read One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 1. There's 2 volumes by Whitney Webb. I fell into Whitney Webb's content actually, it was a podcast she was on YouTube. And I was like, who is this girl? I need to know more. She had a book. She's an investigative journalist. And so I started reading her work, and I was like, oh, wait, okay. She seemed like she put some shit together. Like, she put some pieces together, and I rock with it. And based off what I know, it started to make a lot of things make sense. So the book thoroughly describes how blackmail functions just as a tool of power. I mean, that's throughout American history. And she traces how intelligence agencies, organized crime, Wall Street, and all these political elites have historically used sexual compromise, which is basically, blackmail evidence, and financial leverage to control influential figures. The entire system is built on that. And not only that, it is also used to shape policy, to shield themselves from accountability, which we see today. The core thesis is that blackmail is the infrastructure. The whole country, all the policy making has just been built on blackmail, which to me was like, this makes sense.
I feel like I'm not shocked. I feel like I should be.
It's not.
But also, we both worked in Hollywood, so it's like kind of the same.
That part.
Same energy.
And honestly, like, as I was reading this, I was like, yep, okay. That feeling that you get where you feel like you knew something already? Mm-hmm. And then you were just like, confirmed, got it. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, me not trusting anything these people do makes complete and total sense. But I feel like after this episode, we need to start like treating businessmen like a common criminal, as how black
and business women.
Well, that part. And I'm just using businessmen as the overarching term because, patriarchy. But I feel like we should treat them as kind of young niggas.
I'm sorry, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you heard that right. People love to grab their purses when they see like a young, black kid with dreads walking down the streets, right? We need to start doing that with businessmen. Anytime you see a white man in a suit, I'm going to need for you to cross the street every single time. Because these niggas are nefarious, okay? This is insane. Okay? That's all I got to say. There's that. Well, that's not all I got to say. We got an hour and a half of this. But this is the first time, too, where I've felt like I just really needed to break these episodes into like unique parts because there's a lot of information. Shout out to Whitney Webb. Not that she would ever listen to this podcast, but
You don't know that.
I don't, but I will say I have never seen anybody source. She sources per chapter. You know how people source, they put the index at the end of the book.
Yeah.
These are all the books I read. No. She already know people are going to be coming at her and being like, nope, you lied about that. Nope, you ain't telling the truth about that. She sourced, there's at least 4 pages of cited references at the end of every chapter.
Oh, that's amazing. She gets the internet. She knows it coming.
Insane. Yeah. And so I broke these 2 parts of this episode up from 1910s to 1990s. This book is filled with so much information, so many names. It was a lot. The research was incredibly thorough, and the number of people involved would overwhelm anyone listening. So what I try to do is try to be as concise as possible. I'll start with the earlier decade. I'll give you the scandals. I'll show you I'll sprinkle in the things that you know, but then I'll sprinkle in things that you don't know. And if you want any additional context, all I can say is you need to listen to or read Whitney Webb's book, because she's a totally different beast. Like, I kind of got the feeling she's neurodivergent, because the way she just pulls, the way she's able to go to information in conversation. We're not talking about her like just exclusively talking about the book. This woman has done all of the investigative work. She knows it. And
what does she do again?
She's an investigative journalist. She's independent.
Right.
And
so this is like her whole career.
This is what she's been doing. She also doesn't live in America anymore. She lives in Chile. Yeah. So, but yeah, I highly recommend. I'd also like to add that this episode is going to be exclusively based off her research. I didn't do any additional research because I want people to hear from her perspective. I feel like not enough people are talking about her. I think that's my thing. And so of course we'll sprinkle in our commentary, but other than that, let's get this show on the road. I guess you can sip. Oh, you don't even know what the poison is. The poison on this episode is the Hemingway Daiquiri, which is 2 ounces of light rum, 1/2 ounce of maraschino liqueur, 1/2 ounce of fresh squeezed grapefruit, 3/4 ounce of freshly squeezed lime juice. Make that work with some simple syrup. Kind of want to try it. I'm not a daiquiri drinker, but I kind of want to try it.
I had a Paloma last week, so I'm in a grapefruit kind of energy.
Yeah, that feels like a throwback for some reason. That's like the male mimosa. I'm saying that because men prefer to order Palomas over mimosas.
I hadn't had a Paloma in years. I don't know what made me get it, but
yeah, I'm not anti. It's tequila, right?
I think it was mezcal in the one I got.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, sometimes they do that as a variation. All right, so let's do this. Now, I think Cat Williams was right. I'm gonna start this by saying this. When he said that we were entering an awakening, right? He said that on Shannon Sharp. He was saying that everything was going to be exposed. Don't even get me started with Shannon Sharp. We ain't got to go there.
I almost did a impression, but it's not necessary at all.
In this country, speaking specifically about the United States, we've always known something was a little bit off. And there's this unspoken understanding that the system doesn't quite add up. Right? I mean, I think Black people for sure feel that way. The math never really seems to work. And it's definitely not in the favor of the many. Right? Like It's more for everyone else, not
for the 10 billion.
Yeah, for sure. And so for me, slavery has always been the barometer, and it still is. I mean, any country capable of institutionalizing, profiting from, normalizing chattel slavery is a country capable of anything. It's kind of how I feel like I've kind of always thought about it.
Yeah.
And that history doesn't disappear. It kind of evolves. It mutates. And this episode isn't meant to be like a revelation, because I feel like what it is more of like a compilation of all the information that people have always kind of been suspect about.
Yeah.
But reading this book just didn't shock me. It just confirmed what my gut had been kind of telling me for years. Right. And the thesis is simple, and it's completely unsettling. And in most cases, we are not in control of our own reality.
That just made me sad, but you're right.
Yeah. A small group of deeply callous people, they're in control of your reality. And many of them exhibit traits that outside of like boardrooms and corporations and governments, we would label them as sociopathic. And in some cases, we'd probably label them as psychopathic, because it's kind of like what we're saying now when we say there's no ethical billionaire. It's true.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Most billionaires and trillionaires, right? Anyone of like true wealth, they say that they're sociopath.
Yeah.
Like to get to that point, you can't.
You have to
think a certain way.
Yeah, and hard decisions become a norm. So on a micro,
and step on people, frankly.
In my opinion, extreme wealth often requires divesting from empathy. It just
100%. Yeah.
On a micro level, that looks like a business owner who's firing a struggling pregnant employee because the company has margins to
right, and you need the overhead. Yeah,
it is what it is. Or a landlord evicting a tenant of 14 years because compassion doesn't pay the mortgage. It's cold. That's true. But it's still operating within a framework of human consequence. Like there's something about that we still understand. And there's at least an acknowledgement of some harm. Because with some people, they still understand that this is going to suck that I got to do this to this person.
Yeah.
On a macro level, it's far more sinister because the CEO restructures everything to appease the shareholders. And then millions lose access to their health care. Free Luigi. But a politician who's like authorizing the bombing of a small country, it's not because it's necessary, but because they can, and because the economic dominance of the country that they're in or their own personal interests demands it. So power, unchecked, reframes human lives. And over time, it reframes it to look like an acceptable loss. It's collateral damage.
Right. No,
I'm okay with that. And so
you sound like the Joker.
No, seriously. No.
Honestly. Yeah, that whole little speech about
Yeah.
Acceptable loss.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, even the idea of aggressive expansion, you are willing to do whatever to get the result that you want to get at any cost, and you fuck all to everybody else.
Yeah.
And so the real question becomes, what are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to sacrifice your life or your soul? One of the issues that I had even when I was in LA, and I realized it early, I remember having that conversation with Ashley, which was, I don't know if I'm able to do the things that's required to make it over there.
Yeah.
And
I know exactly what you mean too.
Yeah. I knew that in LA, which I think is a problem that happens with Chicago artists too. Because in Chicago, we have like big city, sure. Midwestern kind of small town sensibilities where we're just like real, and we still like the idea of speaking to strangers on the street, just like a head nod or a smile, an acknowledgement of each individual, understanding of their circumstances. In Chicago, it's different. And so I think going to a place like LA or even going to a place like New York, there's a shark mentality that not all of us are bred with.
Yeah, and I feel it's like constant.
Yes. And that's why you got so few people who come out of this from here. And those that do, they left and they never came back. Mm-hmm. It's like, because what do people say too about Chicago niggas? We don't acknowledge celebrity.
Yeah, like that's when the whole influencer thing happened. Yeah. Here. Like nobody cares. Like you can be an actual celebrity and like
oh, okay.
I'm not saying you won't get any attention, but the average it won't shut down the city.
No, it's like, oh, cool.
People can just kind of exist here in some way. Like,
it's a very laxed environment where you're just like, oh, okay, that's dope. Yeah, that's cool that you do that. Yeah, there's no true celebration for celebrity in this town. So I think a lot of people who you think of your people like Kanye West. There are people who knew Kanye West when he was broke that still live here. Yeah. Kanye West come back. Kanye West is just back.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
I mean, and obviously people get crowds and like their fans, 100%. But no, you're right though. Like there's a lot of people like, oh, that's just, I knew Kanye back in.
Yeah. It was like, okay. And so I think for me, that's why too, LA just never really felt good. It didn't feel organic. It felt fake. And it felt very manufactured, which it is. And 100%. That's okay. And that's no disrespect to LA. I'm more so talking about the culture of Hollywood within LA.
100%. Yeah, it's the culture. Like people just are, I mean, obviously fake, but it's just everything feels so forced
so
and performative, I guess.
Yeah.
And like you said, Chicago, people just kind of go about your business. But
and
LA, people just really take that extra step.
And I feel like I'm a nice person. So the attitudes that a lot of people who were expats that were kind of molding to fit whatever LA wanted them to do, like, do this at all costs. It was like, I mean, but is it really that deep?
Yeah.
Or is this more so about, you know what I mean? Like, or is it more so about control? Which I feel like it's mostly about control. So, you know, this book is about the callousness of humanity at scale, about how focused one must be on wealth and control to turn entire populations into collateral damage and still sleep at night. Because I don't think I would be able to sleep at night, even if I yelled at a PA or if I was just like, don't come. You know, when you hear stories about people who say things like, oh, yeah, you know, he wouldn't let me come to work, or he got mad at me because my mom died and I couldn't go to work.
People are like
that. Are like
I've had bosses like that where they just like, it doesn't matter the circumstances. They do not care.
At all. And
like,
I think that's weird. I think that's weird.
Business is business and things have to get done. But there's a certain level, like human to human, you have to understand people go through things.
Absolutely. Like, oh, okay. Your car or your mom or your dog or whomever. Whatever.
Now, if you having those things happen every day, maybe it's a little different. But
well, yeah. I mean, there's pattern recognition at that point. Like,
you can't have a grandmother die 4 or 5 times. Like, But no,
it's kind of like when people talk about like their significant other, like a guy usually who's like cheated, and he'll be like, yeah, but you know, my grandma died. I was like, okay, like your grandma been died. At some point, you got to stop using your granny as a shield for like your bad decisions. So, all right, let's do this. Let's start from the beginning. So we're going to start 1910s to about 1970s. And Sam Bronfman, okay, and I'm gonna mention his name a lot. So I tried to like mention names a lot so they could stick for you. Was a Canadian American businessman. Okay, he was a billionaire. He was best known as a patriarch of the I cannot pronounce his name. Bronfman, Bronfman family, one of the most powerful dynasties in North American business. The Bronfmans leased their first hotel in Canada in 1903, but then they opened more hotels throughout Canada leading up to World War I. Now, the family would experience financial troubles when 2 of the Bronfman brothers would squander the family money in gambling and unseemly habits. Which, you know, back then that could literally mean anything.
I mean, you start with gambling, then you get vague. It's like, it must be pretty bad.
It's like, well, then what's next?
Right.
So by 1907, Sam Bronfman joined the family hotel business, which was rumored to have expired liquor licenses and were illegally condoning gambling. But that year, the Social and Moral Reform Council targeted the liquor industry. Now, they were this ideological society that claimed that Anglo-Saxon people were the true descendants of the biblical Israelites.
Here we go.
So they were entitled to power, leadership, and moral authority.
Only y'all, huh?
That's just only y'all.
God was like, just them.
Just you.
Great.
Just you. So bars and saloons were pretty much unpopular because the smell, I mean, they were just poor and disgusting. And because of the criminal prosecutions that came out of them, which is also the reason why in America, prohibition became a thing, because they were like, we're kind of sick of these men beating their wives. They keep getting drunk. You know, they come home from work, they get drunk, they beat their wives. Like, we need to simmer this down. So all of these like moral reformist groups started to kind of like pop up. But prior to the war, prohibition in Canada was limited to a few provinces. And then when the war started, they figured maybe limited access to alcohol could also help the war effort. You know, we can't have drunk soldiers. I mean, we kind of need you sober.
Well.
So the alcohol ban was enacted towards the end of the war, which was in 1918. But then by 1928, a great deal of the breweries closed. And this was really bad for business in general. The Bronfmans took advantage of the loopholes, though. So, for example, the Bronfman brothers, Abe, Sam, and Harry, they exploited the fact that liquor was prohibited within certain provinces, but they were still allowed to import the alcohol. So they could still import it, but they couldn't sell it, which I just find that just dumb. So they
but
set
that
up.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. He's like, what are you bringing it in for if you're not selling it? They're like, you can bring it in, but you can't distribute it.
They meant just like to use it, but there wasn't a limit. Like
to,
how much
to bring it in?
Yeah, like
No,
how much you
like
import?
there was no, from what I read, there wasn't a limit to bring it in. But they set up these mail order businesses and they made a ton of money. And even better, the loophole allowed the alcohol to be sold for medicinal purposes, which prompted them to create a whole drug company so they could import the alcohol in to pharmacies.
I feel like you're going to name a company. It's going to be something.
No, well, I mean, I will name a company eventually.
Oh, okay.
But the Bronfmans were also able to benefit from the Liquor Commission's corruption, which allowed them a percentage of the liquor that was seized so it could be sold back to them and then resold at a markup. So they seized it, bought it back, and then resold it at a markup.
This is America.
Yeah. Foolishness. The Bronfman family connections, though, was in the Hudson Bay Company, which was one of the oldest corporations in the world. They were backed by elite politicians from England, and it was basically created in the 1600s under King Charles II of England. But they trusted Sam Bronfman after he refused to make any profits from thousands of cases of Dewar whiskey, which I thought it was Dewar's. You've seen that, Dewar?
Didn't realize it till you said
yeah,
I thought the same thing.
Dewar's. I didn't know that.
Didn't know that.
The Hudson Bay Company wanted to buy back from him. So he was basically like, all right, I don't need to make a profit off this. We good. And they were like, all right, bet I like you. So they became cool with him. Now, Harry Bronfman, one of the brothers, was pretty good at maintaining those relationships with like corrupt politicians who had no plans on acknowledging the anti-liquor laws. Like these corrupt politicians was like, prohibition, who cares? So, because they were politicians, they like to get drunk. And it just was what it was. But it made sense for the British to maintain the ties with the Canadians. The companies like Dewar's and many other British and Scottish distilleries were making a ton of money in the Americas. So they were like, we got to keep this flowing.
Yeah.
The laws are whatever. They didn't want the revenue stream to stop. And liquor helped balance the books during the war. They were spending so much money in the war that they were like, we kind of need that liquor money. So we just going to engage in illegal liquor trading. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. By 1920, the U.S. liquor ban went into effect as well. And Bronfman built his entire fortune during Prohibition, while alcohol was illegal in the U.S., but legal in Canada. Legal, kind of. Half legal, half not. Depends on the province. Now
sounds like weed now today.
Basically, yeah. No, seriously.
Yeah.
Now they imported insane amounts of American liquor. The Bronfmans would water it down, and then they'd sell it back to the U.S. Right. So they were basically selling us crack. The British, the Scottish, and the Canadians would join forces and they would make the Distillers Corporations Limited. That was the company. But the Bronfmans had two middlemen in the 1920s. It was a man named Louis Rosenstiel and Winston Churchill. Churchill was connected to Hudson Bay. And by the 1930s, after meeting Elizabeth II, Sam Bronfman created Crown Royal.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And would also eventually purchase Seagram's.
Oh, see, I knew we'd get there.
Yeah, you know things.
all the stuff.
Over the years, the Bronfmans would use middlemen like Lucky Luciano, though, and Mo Dalitz and Meyer Lansky, who are mobsters. Lansky is a
was
one.
Lucky in what was that?
Lucky Luciano.
Wasn't he in Boardwalk?
I don't know. I didn't watch Boardwalk.
Oh,
I know.
Interesting.
That's bad.
Okay, sorry.
Especially considering I'm trying to write a Prohibition show, but I was also trying to avoid it.
Fantastic, by the way.
I know. My mom loved it.
So good. Buscemi.
Meyer Lansky, was he in the show?
Say it again.
Meyer Lansky, a Jewish accountant.
Not that I remember, but it's possible. It was a big cast, a lot of characters.
Yeah, a lot of names.
Yeah.
Now Lansky is one key figure that you will hear about a lot here. The Bronfmans would expand to other places too. They'd expand to Mexico. They'd expand to the Caribbean. And by 1934, they were charged with conspiracy and tax evasion. Because, duh. So Sam Bronfman allegedly proceeded to destroy thousands of documents after, being charged. But by 1935, all the Bronfman brothers were acquitted. And all they had to do was pay $3 million. Which I think is
Easy work.
Yeah, which I think is also I think it's a big problem when you talk about like justice. When you are tacking charges onto millionaires and billionaires and you hit them with fees, that does not keep them from committing crimes. They can afford the fees.
It's how the cycle continues.
It does. It 100% does. Now, most of Bronfman's contacts were associated with the National Crime Syndicate, by the way. The National Crime Syndicate, and with reason, because he was dealing heavily in alcohol during the Prohibition, and most of the people running the business of alcohol during the Prohibition were mobsters. The National Crime Syndicate was an informal nationwide criminal alliance designed to coordinate organized crime across the United States. Right.
I mean, you can't call yourself a syndicate and then say you're informal.
Okay. Now, think less street gangs, more criminals with like companies type vibes. It was a network system. It was the Italian American mafia. It was the Jewish organized crime. It was like regional criminals as well.
Sounds pretty formal.
They were doing, that was pretty legit. Yeah. All cooperating to reduce violence, though, because remember, in the Al Capone years, things got a little bloody. After St. Valentine's Day Massacre, things got a little weird. And so they were like, hey, we're going to increase profits. We're going to manage the territory. We gotta have more of a government structure, so to speak, because, a lot of people dying. It's getting a little dangerous. Luna, you're going to have to relax. Don't do this. I thought I drugged you enough. Speaking of crime.
I was going to say, can you say that on the internet? Or?
Now, as we know, Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky were Bronfman's connections. The commission was composed of major crime families as the governing council, and this was in an effort to create structure, specifically during a time of constant street warfare. So violence was bad for business, and so Lansky would offer exclusive protection to Bronfman and his alcohol shipments. He was like, you ain't got to worry about it. We'll secure you at the ports, but you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. You
have to watch Boardwalk.
I know, I need to watch.
Sorry, it just reminded me of some of it.
I'm pretty sure it's going to, because I'm pretty sure that show was pretty historically accurate. Now,
I can't speak to that.
Yeah, but you'll see. At least highly publicized violence, though, was bad for business, because when a biographer attempted to write about the Bronfmans, he was threatened, and eventually he was found poisoned to death, which, things like that, needless to say, the book never happened. Because it's like...
Because he's dead, yeah.
Now, in addition to the aforementioned middlemen, Lansky and Rosenstiel, there was a man named Joseph Reinfeld. Reinfeld had apparently imported 40% of the illegal alcohol at the time and came up with elaborate schemes to launder money in Canada through the Bronfman Company by way of shell corporations connected to foreign and domestic bank accounts. So now we've shifted from streets to the boardroom. It's getting real corporate.
Yeah.
Fast forward in a minute. By the 1950s, the Kefauver Committee was called, and this was a U.S. Senate investigation that happened between 50 and 51 that publicly exposed organized crime as a national coordinated enterprise. And it wasn't just a collection of bad dudes. This was like an entire group of people.
I told you it sounded pretty formal.
Yeah, for sure. Now, a bodyguard by the name of James Ruckin testified and made a claim that Bronfman were running houses of ill repute in the early days, which could be confirmed by the Canadian Mounted Police, because he was like, they stay up in there. They stay up in there. They were for the men who, quote, slept fast. Whorehouses. Sam Bronfman would say that. I put that
together, but I was like, I've never heard slept fast before.
Sam Bronfman would say that if they were brothels, they were the best in the West.
Okay.
They, of course, denied the allegations, though. And the Bronfmans like to keep a squeaky clean image as if they were like clean philanthropists, which they weren't. Even though they also used their hotels as distribution points. And they later register drug companies to register them as drug companies to sell alcohol as tonic. Girl, if you don't shut up. They understand. Y'all understand. Luna is here. She's obnoxious. So
she's not obnoxious.
It was purported that Ruckin was just trying to blackmail the Bronfmans and only decided to testify when the hush money wasn't paid. This was the bodyguard. And so 2 things can be true.
Why
here.
wouldn't you pay him?
Yeah, fact. But 2 things could be true. And anyway, Ruckin turned up dead. Apparently, he slit his own throat with a straight razor. These types of things happen.
Or they don't, and someone else did
apparently
it.
These types of things. He's just like, I'm ready to go. It's like, now, Louis Rosenstiel, though, on the other hand, is a big piece of the puzzle. Rosenstiel, once a friend of Bronfman's, quickly became his enemy. And after dropping out of high school, now in the early days, after dropping out of high school, apparently Rosenstiel tells everybody that he ended up in the south of France where he ran into Winston Churchill, which everybody's like, nigga, you lying. Ain't no teenager in the south of France running into Winston Churchill, who gave him advice to prepare for liquor's return in the U.S., which he claims was like the pivotal moment. It was like, dude, you're lying.
Right.
So after 10 years, Rosenstiel was able to convince one of the Lehman brothers to give him a loan. Don't nobody believe that either. All very suspicious given his age and the access. But, I'll continue because to me, it all starts to make sense eventually. Rosenstiel created Schenley Distilleries in 1933, and he also worked very closely with Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky is everywhere. He's the one who orchestrated basically the shell company, how to launder money effectively, the modern way to launder crime money through corporations, legitimate, how to make your dollars look legitimate. Meyer Lansky created that. He's a mobster. He's a Jewish mobster. Worked with Al Capone. Worked with Lucky Luciano. He's worked with every mobster known to man. Like did you see, you saw First Godfather, right?
Yes.
Okay. He's kind of like the consigliere character.
Okay, I lied. I don't remember it. And I know that's a terrible thing to say.
So moving on.
To the public. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I don't remember.
Schenley, according to Bronfman, was a dump, the distillery. Bronfman was like, this place is dump and the alcohol is bad. This could be why they eventually fell out. But Bronfman couldn't reach some sort of agreement. So they say, they couldn't reach an agreement. That's why they fell out and the relationship went south. It's like, nah, it probably is because Bronfman was like, your liquor's whack. Your distillery's dirty. It's a dump. Why does anybody even rock with you for real? Now, Bronfman just didn't seem like impressed by this man. And so Rosenstiel's wife, Susan, would later say that they were surrounded by mob men all the time. And Rosenstiel would just be handed cash all the time. Nothing to see here, by the way. But this could be why they fell out. Bronfman felt that Rosenstiel needed to stay in his underworld lane, right? Bronfman's thinking, I'm the maker of Crown Royal. You are the guy that provides the booze illegally. That's where you should stay. You don't need to be in a distillery business. That's how I was taking it. Like he was...
A lot of nerve, but I guess I
mean, it's a whole bunch of nerve, right? But at the time, most mobsters were making a transition from the underworld to the above world of business and banking. I mean, it was a logical step for a lot of mobsters because they were sick of killing people and they were sick of going to jail. They like, okay, we can do this differently.
And I assume it's easier to just move how you want if it looks legit.
Absolutely. And still, it's all still criminal, but, it's more front facing. Like you could be out in the open.
Right.
Now, Rosenstiel's crime, of course, was blackmail. Rosenstiel was known for bugging his offices. He would do something terrible like fire an employee and wait to hear them say something compromising on the recordings and then use it against them later.
Wow.
He also, according to his wife, had recording devices all over the home. So he could have blackmail material for his party guests.
And what year was this?
This was in the 30s.
I didn't even know that. Like you could just go get recording devices and put them all over the house. I didn't even know that was a thing yet.
Now, his home had apparently been wired from roof to basement by a private investigator. And this happened to be the same private investigator who later spied on Marilyn Monroe.
No, busy career.
Yeah,
okay.
that was his thing. His thing was to pin sexual blackmail on people. That was his thing specifically. So rumor has it that Rosenstiel was bisexual. At the Shenley offices, they would call him Rosie.
What? I was going to, never mind.
Now, Rosenstiel's...
No, now I feel I need to clear it up because it was weird.
What?
I know a person named Rosie at work, but I don't.
Oh.
Because I feel like I shouldn't say that right now. It's a little too honest.
But I don't. I actually don't. I know her name's Rosie.
No, it's a him. That's why I said it.
Oh, it's a dude?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Never mind. I'm saying too much.
We don't have to
now.
do that.
Yeah, it's getting
now,
too much.
Rosenstiel's wife would later say that her first marriage collapsed because she discovered her ex was gay. And then she learned her second husband was also gay. So this woman is like, I'm not winning. He was
2 in a row.
I know.
That's
2 in a row is a lot.
That's a choice.
Yeah, it is at some point. Like, you ain't see the signs at all. But he was completely uninterested in her and sexually, but wanted her to dress up in little girl's clothes. So I guess she was a little confused. She was just like, your face.
So it's not a camera.
Maybe
here.
she was more so thinking like, oh, he's into younger girls. Not that he wasn't into, which I would like. That's
also
a reason
a problem?
to not. Yeah.
Okay.
That's also a reason to not rock with somebody. But hey, back then women were
Who am I to judge, huh?
But okay. But women were also marrying men because they weren't allowed to have anything. Like, they couldn't have a bank account.
Because she wanted like food in a house.
She was like, now, then she learned that, and she later discovered that he was in bed with his political fixer, power broker, and later the lawyer and mentor of Donald Trump, Roy Cohn.
Wait, what?
Yeah. He basically shrugged it off and was like, this is just alone time with my attorney.
In the bed? Sorry.
So Susan, she would later say that Roy Cohn would like flaunt his homosexuality in front of her and spoke openly about sexual escapades with other men, including Cardinal Spellman of the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. Spellman hosted his own parties. He also had his own list of favorites among the young priests, choir boys, and altar boys. So that's a tale as old as time. Huh? Yeah. Okay. Along with Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover, Spellman would be credited for legitimizing the McCarthy's Red Scare, which we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, Roy Cohn was at the time, he was the chief counsel of the Senator Joseph McCarthy during the Red Scare of the 1950s. He helped turn accusations into a political tool. That was his thing. Didn't I just say that he was the mentor to Donald Trump? Kaufman, the woman, Susan, Are
you going to bleep that? I feel like as soon as you say that word.
Cohen, hosted parties at the Plaza Hotel in New York, right? And Kaufman was invited to one of these parties with her husband. And they called it the Blue Suite. And it was named that because there was like blue paint on the walls. And in the Blue Suite was J. Edgar Hoover, a.k.a. Mary, dressed in women's clothes and a wig. And Roy Cohn and 18 to 19-year-old boys in the room. Rosenstiel tried to get his wife to engage, and she was like, nah, I'm good.
I'm sorry, engage in what again?
The Rosenstiels left. But later, Cohen would tell her that Mary Hoover attends the parties all the time and brings his ladies' clothes. So Kaufman was grossed out, but she got over it when she was bribed with a pair of Harry Winston earrings.
One pair? That's all it took?
She like, I'm rich, so technically. But now Kaufman eventually testified, though, against her husband. It was closed doors. It didn't happen until 1970s, but she was hit with attempted perjury charges. It was because it was believed that Rosenstiel himself initiated those charges to keep her quiet. And Sue Kaufman, apparently had photos of Hoover with all of his mob associates and Cohn. These Blue Suite parties were proven to be used for sexual blackmail against Hoover, who was captured in the photos in women's clothing. And the suite was also used as a tool in the sexual blackmail ring for extorting the powerful. He would just like invite people over, get them in awful situations. And so Cohn felt like this blackmail situation was a crusade against communism.
I'm sorry, did I miss something?
You did.
Okay.
It don't make no sense. This is where Roy Cohn...
Like, that could have been me. I could have missed a detail.
This is where Roy Cohn got his power. And Roy Rosenstiel had the photos too. Those same photos of Hoover were passed on to Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky's another person. You don't want him to have photos of you. Once photos of you in compromising situations are being passed around to people, all of those people control you.
I don't even like normal pictures of myself being passed around.
Like if people got pictures of me from like 2013, like
don't like it.
Don't talk to me.
Don't like it at all.
Don't even want. Now the goal was always to blackmail Hoover. This was well before the Blue Suite situation. That didn't happen until 1958. So Meyer Lansky was the financial architect of like the American organized crime. And Lansky had photos of Hoover as early as 1948. These photos showed Hoover in sexual activities with FBI people. Yeah. But those photos got into the hands of the CIA, which also you don't want the CIA to have anything on you.
Everybody is corrupt.
Period. Like, that's pretty much the gist. Hoover was engaged in oral sex with a man in one photo, and that photo was dated as early as 1946. The CIA intelligence chief, James Angleton, was in charge of the relationship with the FBI, as well as who? Israeli intelligence.
Did they know that their photos were taken, or were these like secret photos?
You know, from what I can tell, they didn't know. But
you're just out here.
How do you not know? Because it's like, it's not, this is 1948, 58, like.
Right, because I've seen them like
flash. It's like a flash bulb.
Yeah, like it's not, I don't think there's a subtle
like, I mean, now the audio probably would have been more secretive, but
well, yeah, you could have a wire.
I think that they were just like taking seductive photos in the party, thinking that they were in a safe space.
Yeah.
That's your first mistake. Right. You are the FBI director, Mr. J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah.
You cannot,
that level of like trust and comfort.
But here's the hypocrisy, though. This whole situation is dumb because during the Red Scare, that's what they did. They would basically they would blackmail people. It was like he had been blackmailed. It's almost like it taught him to blackmail. Now, again, Meyer Lansky, somebody you don't want to have this type of imagery on you. And the ability to corrupt, this is a quote, the ability to corrupt politicians, policemen, and judges was fundamental to mafia operations. The way they found to deal with Hoover involved his homosexuality. That's how they dealt with Hoover. They were like, we got all these pictures of this nigga. He ain't gonna be a problem. He's not going to be a problem. But Hoover was no better because he was likely attempting to maintain his own database of blackmail as well. Even though he's showing up at the party, he's like, okay, you got something on me, I'm going to get something on you.
Yeah.
Which I kind of get eye for an eye a little bit. He was notorious, though. But he went way too far. He was notorious in this regard. He used these files to gain favor and to destroy reputations his entire career. Remember, he tried to blackmail Kennedy and Martin Luther King. Hoover was apparently tied to a man named Sherman Kaminsky, who was involved with sex blackmail using young male prostitutes. And that ring was called the Chicken and the Bulls by the NYPD. Yeah, why? I don't know. Sorry. It was targeting men who were down low and married. So Kaminsky was never arrested. He just disappeared from the courthouse during his sentencing. He was just like, I'm gonna leave. He just left. And it's also believed that he was involved with who? Israeli intelligence. I'm going to keep saying that because Israeli intelligence is heavily involved. It ain't got nothing to do with Jeremy.
I'm almost uncomfortable being here.
You should be.
You're saying too much.
Now, what Hoover had on his side was scandal about his sexuality, like I said, but he was used to it. He was involved with these types of people. He was engaging in debauchery. That only helped him establish his own secret catalog of blackmail. He also used the power of the agency to avoid going against organized crime. So he felt like it was a local problem. The FBI really didn't need to mitigate the mob. Why would we get into that? The entire time Hoover was in charge with the FBI, he wasn't really doing anything about the mob.
I mean, I could see why.
Because they had pictures of him in panties.
Right.
Now, this allowed people like Meyer Lansky and Louis Rosenstiel to do whatever the fuck they wanted to do. Now, as far as Roy Cohn, he was in his 20s when he originally met Hoover, and he would have needed Hoover's support during the Red Scare. If you don't know what the Red Scare is, the Red Scare was a period of intense fear and paranoia and political repression in the United States. It's centered on the belief that communists were secretly infiltrating American society. So the government, the unions, Hollywood, schools, everywhere. There were two Red Scares. The first one was in 1917 through 1920, which is what triggered the Russian Revolution. That's the one that J. Edgar Hoover technically was born out of, right? And then there was the second Red Scare, the 1940s into the 1950s, that sparked the Cold War with the Soviet Union. That one is where McCarthy became an issue. This is where Roy Cohn enters the story. He helped stoke the fear. He helped prove that you can win without needing to prove anything. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to be right about anything. Again, he's a mentor to Donald Trump. Now, the House Un-American Activities Committee, aka HUAC, and Joseph McCarthy were key players in creating blacklists, where basically they would host these public hearings. Actors, musicians, politicians, all these people would have to come up and they would have to prove that they are not communists, that they don't engage in communism. And what would tend to happen was that people would just get blamed for being communists. Mm-hmm. So if you were black, if you were part of any activist organizations, careers were absolutely destroyed by association alone. If you were associated with a communist, then you were communist. And if you were communist, if you were an actor and you were communist, you probably weren't going to get another role. That was just what it was.
Yes, it's like that now a little bit.
It is. When in actuality, this was about consolidating power. It was about breaking up labor movements like unions and things like that. And it was about silencing people. That's really what it was about. It was a stress test of how far power could go with fear. You terrify people, you make them feel kind of like what we're feeling right now. You make them feel like they don't have any options. People gonna start snitching left and right. He's ICE. Go get him. Same shit. They did that during the Holocaust too. Now, they weren't just connected by the loins. Okay. Roy Cohn, Rosenstiel, Hoover, they were connected by the director of American Jewish League Against Communism as well. I'm going to just put this out there. The Jews are everywhere in this.
Oh my God.
And particularly Zionists.
Can you say that too?
I'm not going to shy away from it because it's not anti-Semitism.
Well, you see what they did to Ye. Shout out Ye.
He was also just being ridiculous. But it's less. You know what?
Let me stop.
I mean, it's a more nuanced conversation than that. But he was right about a lot of things. But it's right message, wrong messenger a lot of the time. He was
his delivery is usually not great, but he is not necessarily lying when he
no, absolutely
speaks.
not. And we're gonna talk about that because Hoover, let me just say this: I'm a preface everything that I say going forward with this. This whole idea of anti-Semitism is a very Zionist approach to avoid accountability. You do not want anybody to stop you from doing anything. So when anyone ridicules the thing, you call them an anti-Semite. It's not true because Zionism doesn't really have anything to do with Judaism. Nobody has a problem with Jews, religious or ethnic. It's more of a problem with Zionists, which is a political ideology. You know what I mean? And I'm going to bust down Zionism. I'm not just going to keep saying that without giving people context of why I keep saying that. So you got to let me cook for a minute.
Let me cook.
Now, Hoover was pretending to monitor the morality or the morally inept. That's what he was acting like he was doing. But in that time, he was doting on Cohn. And they would trade favors and compliments and gifts and have private dinners. They were just doing all the gay stuff. All the while, the government was in the middle of the Lavender Scare. The Lavender Scare was when the U.S. government in the late 1940s into the 60s started targeting gay and lesbian federal employees based on a claim that homosexuality made people a security risk. So you were vulnerable to blackmail because you were gay, and therefore you were unfit for public service. This was driven by the Department of State and the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover, who is also gay, in my opinion, and obviously. But personal vulnerability can be weaponized. That's what everybody learned by this. The Lavender Scare wasn't about national security at all. And it's funny because Rosenstiel and Cohn, both criminals, were involved with the director of the FBI, romantically and sexually. This is indeed a matter of national security and a conflict of government interest if you're going to be nailing other gay and lesbians to the cross.
Yeah.
The truth of it is you personally know that it's a matter of national security because you're actively being blackmailed for doing gay stuff.
Right.
So Alan Dulles, who is the CIA director, had leverage over Hoover as well. Dulles compiled a dossier on McCarthy's sex life as well. He was including allegations of homosexuality against McCarthy. McCarthy had been rumored to visit gay hideaways in Milwaukee and bird circuits in New York. The U.S. Army compiled the Shine Report, which detailed how Cohn and McCarthy attempted to blackmail the Army to secure special favors for a man named G. David Shine after he was drafted in 1953. And then there's the European tour, which is mentioned in the book. It was a highly controversial trip that was taken by Roy Cohn and G. David Shine. And they were serving as investigators for Senator McCarthy during the Red Scare, his subcommittee. The two traveled across Europe to search for pro-communist literature in American Overseas Library, but the tour became a subject of significant public ridicule due to the flirtatious antics and high-profile nightclubbing. Gay stuff. So the following year, the 1954 hearings ended McCarthy's political career and humiliated Cohn. He eventually left. He ended up being an attorney at another law firm. This won't be the last time we hear about him. But he was faced with pressure from the Justice Department, and Cohn sought refuge in powerful connections, including major organized crime. That was the thing. So now we got a link between politicians and crime because at this point, they need it. Roy Cohn, he was a guest of honor at a party hosted by Mo Dalitz, who is a major Jewish mob figure and an associate of who? Meyer Lansky. Lansky just keeps Lanskying. Now, by 1960s, Rosenstiel sold a portion of the liquor business back to Rosenstiel, that awful Schnelly whatever company he had, and he retired. But he also sold his home in Manhattan, which was bugged from sugar to shit. He sold a bugged house to this man named Meshulam Riklis, who was an Israeli-American businessman. Bronfman was engaging in different affairs by the end of World War II, but the Israelis' creation would bring about a new hustle. And by the 1950s, Bronfman was insuring Israel's pilots, and he was purchasing secret weapons and raising funds for Israeli defenses. Bronfman was indeed a Zionist. That's the Crown Royal guy. Which makes sense. He was a Canadian Jew. I mean, he's just supporting Israel. So first, let's talk about what Zionist is, because there is a bit of it, a lot of it being thrown around on social media. Zionism is a political ideology that formed in the 1800s around the belief that Jewish people needed a nation state to survive. Okay. Now, it didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of Europe repeatedly proving through ultimately genocide, aka the Holocaust, that assimilation was not protection for the Jewish people. It just is what it is. It's kind of like what we experience as Black people to a certain extent. We're kind of like not African, but at the same time, we don't get treated like Americans in a real sense. We don't have what we feel like is a safe place to be. Because if we leave a country, we still get treated like crap, you know?
Most places.
No,
yeah, most.
And so they felt like they needed a nation state to survive. And after the Holocaust, if power in the modern world is organized around nation states, then not having one is vulnerable, permanently vulnerable. So early Zionism was more about safety and control. All right. And then the Haganah was a Jewish paramilitary organization formed in the 1920s during the British Mandate in Palestine. And its original purpose was self-defense. Hey, we're protecting Jewish communities from violence at the time when there was no Jewish state and limited protection from the British. The British weren't really helping. They weren't helping them at all post-Holocaust. They like, okay, we'll give you a few things, but pretty much you on your own, figure it out. Basically what the British did. So Israel was established in 1948 and the ideology shifted. The Haganah was absorbed into this like new state. It became the core of Israel Defense Forces, which is what they call IDF. And Zionism was about defending the state power, but defending it at all costs. At all costs, often framing the challenges as an existential threat. And this is what I mean by anti-Semitism. So the defense is so serious to them that anybody who goes against it is anti-Semitic. And it's just like, no, that's not true. That's called criticism.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they tried to pin that on black people for a long time, too. Remember when every time a black person said someone was racist, it was like, oh, you're just pulling the black card. Yeah, you're pulling a race card. It's like, no, that was just
you're being racist and awful.
Yeah. Now.
And I told you about it.
Exactly. It now operates. Zionism now operates as a modern political project that can and does justify displacement, occupation, and inequality. It's not synonymous with Judaism. Not all Jewish people are Zionists. It's morphed into this ideology that's shaped by fear, power, and the belief that maintaining this establishment of Israel justifies almost anything. So Bronfman put a lot of his time and his money into their initiatives. He was a Canadian Jew, by the way. I said that. The framework was already set. And Israel gained its independence by 1958, and many of the Jews had already silently and forcibly positioned themselves to maintain it. So they were already very powerful, very rich Jews that were able to help Israel sustain itself by the time it gained its independence in the 50s. Now, before and during the war, the Haganah had already begun to stockpile the weapons, the ammunition, the aircraft, everything. And the British Army supplied the weapons and provided the training to the Haganah to fight against the Arab forces. But there were several activist groups, several networks and foundations that were created to help establish Israel. And once they got their independence, they were good to go. Jewish millionaires, billionaires from the United States, they would ultimately pay for the effort. So people like Max Fisher, who is Lex Wexner's mentor, and we'll talk about him later, was one of them. And we don't have to assume here. There was definitely a criminal element involved as well. There was the super mob, that is the name, and it was a pretty close group of Jewish and Italian mobsters and businessmen like the ones that I explained. They would rise from the underworld to the above world, and they would use whatever their resources were to help the state of Israel as a safe harbor, as like the capital. You know what I mean? It's for capital too, instead of like religious reasons. It's only religious to poor people to me at this point. Like the rich people are capitalizing off of it. Both sides, from the Arab side and from the Jewish side. Now that we understand the early figures and how all that resentment starts, we can start talking about how it developed and some of the games that they like to play. Now, between the 1950s and 1960s. In the 1930s, though, there was a former Jewish soldier. His name was Yehuda Arazi. He ran guns to help the Israeli forces. And after that, other companies were created to help the effort. So Arazi would meet Meyer Lansky, who he asked to help with maritime transport. Like, yo, I need some boats, basically. And so Joseph Ziccarelli, who is another mobster, was in charge of trafficking the arms as well. So what we're piecing together here is the fact that crime helped establish legitimate companies that use their profits to invest in Israeli military forces, right? And this is just the beginning of a bigger thing, because later America just started doing the exact same thing.
So by a whiteboard.
I know. It's like we need red string. But
well, they can just play it over and over. I'm trying to keep up live here.
That's true. Now, by the 1950s, Ziccarelli was working with organized crime bosses to transport heroin, which was ultimately a part of the French Connection. That was a movie that came out with, the old man that just died, the actor, not Gene Hackman. Wait, Gene Hackman? Yeah.
He died last year.
Yeah, him and his wife died.
Yep.
Yeah, French Connection is like an old movie from the 70s. French Connection was basically a global smuggling route that operated primarily between the 1930s and the early 1970s, and several organizations were created, like air carriers, things like that. And these air carriers were created to help move product. I mean, that's the thing. It's just like learning that all of these corporations, well, some of these corporations, most of these corporations, were created to push illegal stuff. I mean, several organizations were created, and people like Ziccarelli, he didn't just have his hands in Israel. You can close that window if you need to.
I kind of like to.
Okay. He also had his hands in multiple countries, including Nicaragua. I can never say Nicaragua.
It's a hard one.
Nicaragua, whatever. Mexico, the Dominican Republic, and Cuba. Now, believe it or not, the Nicaraguans started to provide arms to Israel in the 1940s and would later return the favor by arming the Contras, a collection of right-wing rebel groups organized and funded to overthrow the socialist Sandinista government in Nicaragua during the 1980s. And we'll discuss that later. That's more of a part 2 situation. But at this point, the Zionist interests in real estate and banking, etc., would become an even bigger part of the resistance. Most powerful Jewish men helped set up banks to fund the Mossad and the Israeli Ministry of Defense. And we've been hearing a lot about Mossad lately, but let's talk about what that is. It's basically Israel's national intelligence agency. They're controlling the flow of money was Meyer Lansky. Duh. He created the money launderer we know today. He used the network of clean frontmen to operate businesses that could blend criminal cash with legal revenue. He also perfected the method where mob money was deposited into offshore accounts and then loaned back to legitimate mob-owned businesses. This made the funds appear legal. It was also interest-bearing, and it looked better than criminal profit. So
I wish I would have got into crime.
But, I kind of hate that I'm not a criminal.
Sometimes I'm
not gonna lie. It would have been useful right about now.
Yeah, like, this whole route of being a good guy, that's not working
exactly.
out.
And these funds would be used to invest in real stuff like real estate, hotels, resorts, casinos. We're talking about casinos and hotels in Vegas and Caribbean. Like, have you ever seen the documentary Cocaine Cowboy?
No, I've heard of it.
Great documentary. I enjoyed the first one more than the second one. But it's mostly about Griselda Blanco. But it talks about how basically drug money built all of Miami.
Yeah, I see. Even the way you're explaining it now, where it's like they had legit businesses like that came from like fronts.
Absolutely. And, Israel was doing so well that they even were able to buy their first drilling company. They were drilling oil in the 1960s, which was also tied to the mob, particularly a mob firm that was in the middle of a narcotics investigation. So they've just been doing whatever they want forever. Now, over time, these companies would spiral into more and more financial success. I mean, one instance was this bank called Intrabank, and it was founded by this man named Youssef Beitas in Lebanon. This also kind of goes sour because this was in like the early 1950s. Intrabank became the largest financial institution in the Middle East. But they were known for arms trafficking to move money, to hold petrodollars. Petrodollars, we'll talk about that later, actually. I don't even want to convolute the story with that because I was just talking about petrodollars. Yes, because that's normal conversation to me. Let's talk about petrodollars.
You just went through a lot right there.
I did. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But it was a great bank for people who wanted to hide their money from the government. That's what it was. And with that, the CIA was like, we need to go ahead and enter the chat.
I just feel lied to.
Oh, because you have been. It's
why,
not a feeling.
Why did everybody used to tell me crime doesn't pay?
I know.
It sounds like
it's
it
rude.
pays well.
No, it was total manipulation. They just didn't want you to commit the crime.
Clearly.
Now, the CIA was formed in the 1940s. This was when Truman signed the National Security Act. But before it was the CIA, it was called the OSS, was the Office of Strategic Services. That was formed during the World War II. The OSS and the Naval Intelligence were already crooked. They had infamously recruited the mob to protect the U.S. ports, which I'm like, okay. But the bad behaviors of the OSS became the blueprint of the CIA, which is why the CIA at this point is just unruly. Okay, so back to the intrabank.
Wait. I'm sorry. Who paid the mob to watch the ports?
OSS and the Naval Intelligence.
I understand now where you know how they say like if the public really knew about what was happening, like the average person just wouldn't be able to continue.
100%.
I feel like more and more every day, like between like your research, like what we have in the news, all this stuff. I feel like people couldn't handle it.
Yeah,
like, the more I actually found out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie, just listening, and maybe that's what you could do if you want. Of course, like listening just to Whitney Webb talk about her book on a podcast, I was like, fuck everybody.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. I feel like I'm the type of person, like there's certain things I feel like I don't need to know.
Yeah. I mean,
because I feel like some people can handle it and then other people like me are like, why am I going to work again?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and not even, I mean, I think what it put into perspective for me, though, was why I go to work. Because the people who are above me are the ones that's willing to do all of the terrible things.
Yeah.
And I'm just not.
Yeah. And I thought when I was younger, I thought I was willing, but the older I got, the more I realized I was like, it's just, I don't have I have a certain moral compass that I can only do so much to get certain things.
That part. But also, I was just talking about this with my homeboy, and don't judge me, y'all, and you may, but
I was literally thinking, I was like, I'm probably going to judge you, but I'll tell you about it.
Which, he was like, I'm going to tell you.
Which is true friendship.
My biggest issue is that I know what I'm capable of. I just don't want to go to jail.
I think that's a good thing, though. I think people lack awareness. So the fact that you have even an idea of like what you're willing to do, because some people, I feel like like we were talking about LA, people have no idea what they'll do.
This feels like totally off topic, but it isn't. It's like when my ex-boyfriend went crazy on me. The thoughts, that part. But the thoughts that went through my head with this bitch being in my house, I was like praying. And mind you, not religious. I was praying. And
I am. Pray everybody.
Okay. But I was thinking, if he stays here another day, I'm going to jail. You know?
I will not judge you because I've recently had a situation where I understand a little bit.
Yeah.
In certain situations like that, it really pushes you and tests what you realize you're capable of. Not that you'll do it, but just the idea that you're like, whoa, like
I hate that.
Never even thought my mind would go this way.
Yeah.
In the way that I was, you know.
And I had to feel safe. I had to feel comfort in that though, because at this point I was like, I know that if things get real, I may be able to like tap into something.
Yeah, and that's survival. So it's like, no, there's no judgment there. That's like you protecting yourself.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a crazy impulse kind of thing.
100%. I mean, and so to take it to something like financial, if you think of the privilege that most white people have, if you operate in a space of knowing that I'm gonna get away with this.
And we talked about it earlier, patriarchy and being a white man.
I did in my philosophy class. Actually, it was my ethics class. whatever. I can't remember now, but it was something.
It was a class.
It was a class. We talked about morals and ethics. And one of the stories asked the question of like, if you were invisible, what would you do?
Oh, I remember a prompt like that vaguely.
Yeah. And, and it begs the question, it makes you really sit with yourself for a minute because you're like, I don't even know if I like where my brain goes.
Mm-hmm.
White people have had certain privileges where they've had to the justice system to a certain extent. And you know what? Let's just bring it back to the context of this. Mm-hmm. These particular white people who are creating the crime have the invisibility of one, being white, mm-hmm. and two, creating some level of crime that people don't even fully understand yet.
Yeah.
So they're invisible in their own regard. And so, yeah, if you are never held accountable for the thing, what's going to keep you from stopping it? What is going to keep you from continuing to do it?
Nothing.
It's like with a serial killer.
And then you continue to escalate, frankly.
Yes. A serial killer is going to keep serial killing because he can. At this point, you've already proven that you can't catch him.
Well, I mean, like you just said, a serial killer, some of these rich people, at that point, once you get to a certain level, it's like you almost want a new thrill, so you keep leveling
it up.
Like you're so used to, I know I'll get away with that. Oh, that's old work to do it that way. Like, you keep pushing it.
And honestly,
which is crazy.
I just saw a video today that was kind of talking about just like this idea of reaching a complete peak of excitement that you have to do something else to get that. Because to average people, normal successes, normal ways that you're validated through your life, whether it's a promotion mm-hmm. or you got some award or a certificate, we crack these different barriers constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But we're always still kept within like a certain range. Oh, boom, you got your high school diploma, or you graduate from 8th grade, you graduate from high school, maybe you got a bachelor's, maybe you got this, then you got your master's, then you got your that, but you're still kind of left within this gray area. With these people who have all of this power, they have reached the point where, like, one, the normal levels of validation don't do nothing. Like,
right.
What the fuck? I'm a billionaire. Why do I care? Like, I don't need a high school diploma.
Yeah.
I don't need a college degree. I'm a billionaire.
Because that level of wealth gives you access that the average person doesn't understand. And then you want to keep pushing it.
Yeah.
Like, you get used to a certain norm. And when that norm to the average person is like, oh my God, that's what I dream for. It's like, that's your everyday.
But it's also
you're like, what do I do now?
It's also chemical too, because at some point, the actual brain can't even receive the validation the same.
Right.
Like, even if you think of sex, there are some men who've had sex with every type of hot woman that they can have sex with. And at some point,
which is gross, wrap it up.
It like big time. But then at some point they're like, okay, well, now what?
Yeah, and you're desensitized.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you start doing all the very strange things. I hate to say it, but at some point, just kind of being mid-level range of success, it should be enough. That's why I always say that I feel like there needs to be a wealth gap. Like, I don't think people should be able to be billionaires. Millionaires are cool. You could,
I understand that.
10 million, maybe you got even 100 million. But once you start getting into like, oh, I have $2 trillion, like, why?
You're right. I mean, it's like we were talking about earlier in the show. Like, it's at that point you've done something. Like, you can't acquire that level of wealth and not have stepped on somebody.
You have to. A lot.
You have to do some pretty unethical things.
People probably died. Whatever you did, people
billions,
probably died.
Trillions, yeah. Like you make those hard decisions that are like, what? Did you need all of that?
Exactly. Was that necessary? So back to Intrabank. So we got Zionist gangsters working with Arab gangsters, both making money while their people are in conflict. They're working with each other while their people are in conflicts, and the U.S. is stuck in the middle. U.S. basically just wanted the Middle East. It's like, we just want the Middle East. Not to mention, this bank had too much information to ignore. The Yusuf Beitas, he knew too much about the private lives of American and business partners, right? The CIA used intrabank to move black funds for covert operations through the Middle East and Africa. But the legitimate parts of the bank were basically carved out to all the elite interests, and that is what helped orchestrate the fall of this bank. The U.S. and the Saudis were interested. I mean, their interests starved the bank. And it's funny why it did, because in the months leading up to October 1966, a coordinated campaign of like rumors and a sudden stop of credit to this bank triggered a run on the bank. And so Betis turned to the Lebanese central bank. He's like, hey, need some help. They were like, no, you don't. And they wanted his secrets and they wanted his assets. That's what they wanted. But they didn't want him because, to be truthful, he's a Palestinian refugee. We don't want no parts of you. Racism. But he was buying up a lot of stuff. Like he bought this one hotel called Casino du Liban, and he was also buying French and American stuff. And they were like, no, you ain't supposed to be doing all of it. Again, race, it's always going to keep you when you are other in these types of stories, the white people always want to keep you in a particular position.
Absolutely.
They never want you to
You're
surpass
immediately
them.
in a box. Like even if you're of certain affluence, like
yeah. Even when you are like, look at what happened with Candace Owen. She thought she was in the club. Now she can't get in. She can't get in.
That's a story as old as time. That you can't get in. Like
Tokens
you're accepted for a little bit. Like, but
tokens get
you can't
spent.
let that get to your head.
Now, Betis was turning into a competitor. That was his problem. He started funneling massive amounts of capital into Palestinian development and political interests as well. And once the bank collapsed, those prime assets, the airlines, the port of Beirut that he bought, the, Casino du Liban, they were scooped up for pennies on the dollar because they lost their value. And he was forced to collapse. That collapse was not a mistake. It was a way to move the infrastructure of blackmail out of the reach of any government into the hands of private institutions. That's what they wanted. They weren't particularly worried about him as a person. And this is where the first generation, the Bronfmans, the Lanskys, this is where they began to hand the keys over to a new generation of sociopathic power brokers. I mean, the infrastructure is already built. The pipes are laid. Now, Lebanon was a major supplier of raw opium, hashish, heroin. And so a banker by the name of Edmund Safra, he apparently had ties to Israel and was involved in the flow of drugs from Lebanon to Europe. He replaced Betis. He was safe in that position. And his bank became the new safe haven for Western interests. So basically they just like, we need another token. You done. You doing too much. We need a new one. By the 1960s, everything was scandal. I mean, there was scandal regarding like extensive government censorship of FBI files on this scandal called the Profumo affair. And it was basically a British honeypot scandal in 1963, which also brushed up against John F. K. Christine Keeler was a 19-year-old. She was involved. Her friend, Mariella Novotny, she was alleged to have been at these like sex parties in New York. And so the story goes that Novotny was involved in these sex parties in New York and London. But in London specifically, these events were reportedly featuring like black magic, masks, rituals, that whole vibe, sadomasochism.
Don't get me started.
I know, eyes wide shut.
It's probably I just think it's probably connected to a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah,
as we found out, like in modern times, that there's some very strange stuff going on. Like,
absolutely. And Novotny was later moved to New York, where she and this man named Harry Allen Towers allegedly operated a sex blackmail ring targeting UN diplomats and other influential men, including JFK. And before fleeing the U.S., Novotny left her address book to the FBI. Why would she do that? But then the FBI was like, I don't know, we destroyed it.
Please.
We don't have. So the FBI and the CIA are terrified of this British honeypot, basically, because they're concerned that it's going to spill over into JFK's presidency. They're like, okay, these are extracurricular activities of the president. This puts him in a position to be blackmailed. And so this was important to the U.S. because John Profumo, the British Secretary of War, had access to highly sensitive NATO and U.S. nuclear secrets. So that was one of the reasons, too, was because they were like, wait a minute now. He's a part of a honeypot scandal with somebody who has connections to JFK. This is too much. We got to figure out how to control this. But honeypots were useful. The bow tie dossier, which reportedly contained details about Roy Cohn's involvement and efforts to blackmail U.S. officials as well, Cohn utilized his personal friendship with the management of a newspaper to basically place stories in the newspaper that were related to the scandal. All controlled. The dossier was a collection of surveillance files, compromise, gathered by Task Force 157, and that was a super secret naval intelligence group that operated well outside the normal command. So I think the biggest issue that I'm having with all of this is the fact that
nothing is real.
Nothing's real, but there's no oversight. Like everything is just happening behind people's backs. It's secretive. People just like, I'm like, I guess it's kind of what happens in television where people have been in their position for too long and they just start blindly signing shit that they didn't read. Because part of me wonders, why do criminals keep paper trail? I never understand that.
I mean, for their own bookkeeping, I think.
Yeah,
right?
But it's like, but you're keeping it in government databases.
But these are the same arrogant people that think they have the government databases and people like
True.
They are controlled. Like I think it becomes that thing of arrogance where it's like, no.
They could just delete it.
They're not going to do anything.
Yeah, and they could just delete it. You know, no matter. And that's the other part that we were just talking about a minute ago is no accountability because you delete something and you're like, oh, I don't know, I just deleted it. Okay, he don't lose his job for deleting something that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
If I go to work and I'm just like, delete all the digital files, I'm going to lose my job. That's just a given, right?
Probably not.
So, the files contain evidence against all these like high level DC figures, including like senators and congressmen and cabinet members. They were visiting these social clubs and these private apartments that were managed by people like Roy Cohn, like sick perverts who like to get bad information on people. And this was part of this like broader anti-communist network, this effort to use the scandal to undermine political enemies, which, like Kennedy. Anytime they wanted to like if he threatened their interests or Kennedy disagreed with something, it was like, okay, remember, we got all these recordings on you. You may want to shut up. But speaking of Kennedy, mob figures like Meyer Lansky supply women to JFK, and specifically to gather sexual dirt for blackmail purposes. And Hoover, lot of nerve, logged Kennedy's sexual encounters into these like files to protect the president from the mob. But eventually he leaked them to gain leverage during RFK, Robert Kennedy's war on organized crime. He was like, wait a minute, you can't be dealing with the mob. You remember I got all that stuff on your brother? You remember that, right? And so after JFK was assassinated, these files were maintained and they were just passed around the FBI and the CIA and everybody in those institutions. They know about it. Now, I can't avoid mentioning the fact that RFK, he was the attorney general at the time, who also authorized the wiretappings against Martin Luther King, which I think is petty. But at the same time, it's petty, but at the same time, a nice word. He probably had some blackmail files on RFK as well. I mean, Hoover initially claimed that he was only blackmailing King because of communism, but it turned into a complete and total smear campaign where he was just like invading in King's private life and like sending him letters and shit telling him to kill himself. It was just like, it was just dumb. These are just very insecure psychopaths.
They didn't have him at any parties though, right?
Who, King?
Yes.
No.
Okay, great.
I did an episode on the King files last season.
Just checking.
And, King was a philanderer. It was not the worst thing. I mean, it sucks, but don't get me wrong. But I'm like, what's that got to do with him being a great civil rights leader? Nothing. He's a terrible husband, but
completely separate. Not condoning it, but like, I hate when people are like, but he treat. It's like,
it's like, what that got to do with the price of tea in China? The only reason why you are like not at a white water fountain is because of this nigga. A black water fountain is because of this nigga. You worried about him sleeping around on Coretta Scott King? Like, we got to balance. He was also incredibly young. I think that's the part that, because we used to seeing these figures when we were young.
How old was he during the time that we know him? Like, I'm asking you, like, okay.
He was in his 30s.
Okay.
Well, because he was killed at like 38, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
MLK was very young, and the Birmingham jail thing, like, that would have made him in his 20s?
Look, I'm still trying to figure out a lot, so.
You must be high now.
Why?
You sound high.
Oh, well, never mind.
No, that's cool. He was 39 when he was shot. Yeah. He was 39 when he was shot. So literally my age. Like,
now I'm self-aware that
he gonna make mistakes.
No, that's what I meant.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So moving on. So by 1964, Roy Cohn was indicted for perjury and obstruction of justice. He was accused of trying to fix the grand jury investigation into the United Dye swindle to protect mob-linked friends. So notorious. I mean, just back to back. Roy Cohn is never done. Cohn was initially facing a conviction until a mistrial was declared because one of the lone jurors that were holding out, a black woman, was excused after her father died in a car accident during deliberations, which I'm like, you could believe that car accident wasn't fixed, but I don't. Yeah.
Maybe it was.
The United Dye and Chemical situation was being controlled by these two people, and they merged these United Dye situations into like this worthless company called Handridge Oil, which was secretly controlled by Las Vegas gamblers. That was the scam. Like, everything that's legitimate is ultimately being controlled by a criminal.
I think that's what I was saying a few minutes ago, where I'm like, it feels like nothing is real.
It's not.
And everything's really just stemming from crime in some way.
Yeah. And they printed thousands of shares, and they were using like boiler rooms. You remember Wolf of Wall Street when Leonardo DiCaprio was like on the phone trying to sell those crappy shares to
like the penny shares or whatever. Yeah.
Basically, that's what they did. They were hyping up the stock to sell to small investors, and then they dumped it, and they made like $5 million worth of profit off of it. While the company crashed, the shares went from $30 a share to $1. And Roy Cohn, he was the fixer. So to build a case against Roy Cohn, the government granted immunity to these two people that were co-conspirators in exchange for the testimony. But Cohn was acquitted on all charges after his lawyer proved that the government witnesses had lied about offering leniency in exchange for his testimony. So you have to see the United Dye situation for what it is. It's a test run. Criminals like test runs. It's kind of like when somebody takes your card and they go to a gas station, they spend $1. Because they want to see if that car is going to work. These things are test runs. He was then hit with bribery, conspiracy, extortion, blackmail for allegedly bribing a city appraiser. That was in another case called the First Fifth Avenue case. His lawyer had a heart attack. And so, of course, he had to be his own counsel. The second case involved bribery, conspiracy, filing false SEC reports. It was related to $500,000 deposited into a bank in Belgium. He was acquitted of both. See what I'm saying? The criminal never learns if the criminal never goes to jail. Just like me and you just said we won't commit. Now. You know what I mean? Like we were like, oh, I'm never going to commit a crime because we know we're going to go to jail.
I mean, I'm tempted at this point. I'll be honest with you. Like,
you sound like my mom. My mom, like, I'm a day away from a scam.
I'm so tired 100%. At this point. I've tried the straight and arrow for a long time.
Well,
like these people feel like they were making it a long time.
Yeah, it's like you see these people like out here.
But I'm also
like,
not white.
That's why that part, because too. That's why I said we need to start treating these business people like little black teenagers on the street. I'm holding my purse every time I see a nigga in a Burberry trench.
Can I be honest? When I come to your building, that's how I act. Like on the elevator, like, ma'am, I don't want to talk to you. I don't trust you.
I'm going to tell you right now.
And sometimes I feel bad. Other times I don't.
I don't. When the election happened, when Kamala lost, I was in this bitch acting like Paul Mooney.
I can only imagine.
For months.
I can imagine because I know I could get the vibe of the people that are here. And
here's the thing. I didn't know if anybody was a Trump supporter, but everybody felt like an op. I was like, I don't trust none of y'all. I need to move from this building. I need to be around some black people. I need to be around some people I can fucking trust because I don't trust y'all. Mm-hmm. It got to a point where like I used to get frustrated with Luna because she wants to play with everybody. And I was like, you don't know that dog can be a Trump supporter. We don't know them. That dog could be a Trump supporter. Right. Who that dog vote for? Who that dog vote for?
Well, like, we know who her mama voted for.
Literally. Like that was the energy. Like I couldn't even shake it. I did not, and people in my building are generally friendly, but it was
no, they really are. Every time I come in,
don't trust y'all.
A lot of energy.
Oh yeah. It's a lot. Like everybody want to talk about, oh my God, so blah, blah, blah. Headphones on. Don't talk to me. Head down on my phone. Talk to, I was mumbling.
And it's respectful. It's just, I don't want to
mumbling to people. Mm-hmm.
I know you're serious.
I was pissed. So now the government's aggressive tactics, such as illegally intercepting Cohn's mail and leaking negative stories, allow Cohn to successfully frame himself as a victim in a government witch hunt. Witch hunt. Again, this is the mentor to Donald Trump. And Cohn thought that he was invincible. And again, this will not be the last time we hear from him. So next week, we're going to talk in part 2. We're going to move from into the 70s and 80s and the 90s. And just remember, as we make it through these parts, when one guy is deleted or retires or dies or whatever, the system just recruits a new one.
Always another to replace.
Every single time. It's a front man. It's somebody, these fixers, these political fixers, these handlers, who, whatever you want to call them, they just replace them. Because it's a system that has consistently worked for these types of people.
Patterns.
Boom. All right. That's part 1.
Tune in next week.
We got to get something to eat. But I'm going to say this before I go, though. I really did feel like this was a necessary journey at this time. Because I do feel like we sometimes think that things are just happening in a vacuum when it's like, no. Things this drastic don't just happen.
Right.
It's usually
strategic.
It's a strategy, but it's also, there's a boil, right? Like you put the water in the pot, it's simmering, it's doing its thing. And at some point, it's going to come to a boil. And the boil we're experiencing right now is the fact that for years, people have been allowed to behave over and over and over again. Also because people are being put into positions who are also as morally inept. So they approve the bad behavior.
Right.
So what we need is more decent people in positions of power.
And they'll never let them in.
Because, I mean, and I'm going to say this too. You look at a person like Kamala, even Obama did 2 terms. Mm-hmm. But when Kamala, the way they treated Kamala during that cycle, she was like, I'm not running again. When they keep begging Michelle Obama to run, she's like, hell no.
Oh, sure. No, she knows. She's seen too much.
Absolutely. But also good. I'm not saying Kamala is even the best person, but she ain't in the files.
Apparently Barack wasn't in the files either.
No, because Epstein ain't like black people. He ain't like black people. So when you think about these people. I don't
know. Wasn't Chris Tucker out there?
Chris Tucker was out there, and people like,
I guess they like the entertainers.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That's why they keep niggas around. Donald Trump had Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson's, what was that? What was his name?
Don King.
Mm-hmm. He had people like that around because Russell Simmons, because they were rich.
Status. Yeah, and then status. Yeah.
When it comes to actually committing crimes, they don't want black people around. Because also they don't want us to benefit from the crime. And they also know that we talk too much. We're going to have our black ass on the podcast if it don't go right. Look what happened to Diddy. Everybody came out against him. Damn. They were all for it until they weren't.
Diddy and Kelly.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Thank you for joining, and thank you for waiting 1 solid week. I did this before where I skipped a week and then I came back with a part 2. Not this season. This is the first time I'm doing it, but we're going to have 2 part 2s.
It'll be worth it. It's always worth it.
Two-parters. But I hope you learned something. All right. I'm going to see you next week. Toodles.
Peace.